So thank you for that introduction, Andre. And yes, I am Farah Hussain from Canada's Drug Agency. Today, for this session, I represent Canada's Drug Agency, not necessarily me. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional rights and territories of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Canada's Drug Agency recognizes and acknowledges that Canada's health systems have and continue to cause harms to Indigenous people, and we are committed in the spirit of reconciliation to addressing those inequities alongside those communities. Those are my disclosures. They're so small I can't even see them, but hopefully you can. Today, I would like to introduce Canada's Drug Agency, if you haven't already met us in our new iteration, talk a little bit about the expanded mandate, mention the PharmaCare Act, and I'm so sorry I missed about half of the panel earlier today because I feel like I could just invite those individuals up to help me do that part, and talk a little bit about the initiatives within our existing mandate. So Canada's Drug Agency, l'Agence des Médicaments du Canada, so that is why CDA AMC, is a pan-Canadian health organization, and it was created and funded by various levels of government across Canada, and we have been charged with being responsible for coordination, alignment, and public value within Canada's drug and health technology landscape. And the reason why we're emphasizing drug and health technology landscape is because I think there is a bit of a misinterpretation of our name, Canada's Drug Agency, that we only now focus on drugs, which cannot be further from the truth. So just wanted to make sure that that is acknowledged. And in case you are wondering why we have to use CDA AMC, there's a number of other CDAs in the environment, the Canadian Dental Association, Canadian Diabetes Association, and so on. So whenever you see us use the abbreviation, it will be the full CDA AMC. So that's us. Traditionally, we perform health technology assessment, or HTA, and we answer questions such as, how effective is a new technology or drug compared to other options? Which patients benefit the most? Are there barriers to implementation? And of course, should a product be reimbursed by public payers? What has happened with Canada's Drug Agency is there are some additional mandates that are bolted on to the existing functions. So this announcement in December of 2023 established building and not replacing existing mandates and functions, and have added to us the functions of appropriate use and prescribing, enhancing data collection and analytics, as well as improving system coordination and alignment. And so as you can imagine, it's been pretty busy since December of last year in building out these functions. So hopefully that picture helps you understand that these are add-ons to our existing mandate. Speak a little bit about appropriate use. The vision would be to improve appropriate prescribing and use of medications to support better patient outcomes and system sustainability. Probably helpful to understand what do we mean by appropriate use. So this is one of many definitions, but the working definition for our group is persons taking medications best suited for their health needs that provide the greatest benefit and avoid harm. And so it's therefore inappropriate use encompasses a number of concepts, including overuse, underuse, and misuse. Some interesting statistics, numbers that we get from Statistics Canada estimate that 55%, so over half of adults in Canada, take at least one prescription medication, And in fact, 1 in 5 take over 5 prescription medications, which is one of the definitions of polypharmacy. And in that, the estimate is 1.9 million seniors in Canada regularly take one drug that would fall under the inappropriate use that I categorized earlier. And yes, there are existing programs that have been trying to address this challenge. However, there is limited coordination or collaboration amongst those groups. So that is one of the roles for Canada's Drug Agency in this space. So our approach, of course, is to work with health system partners on a Canadian approach, or a coordinated Canadian approach, and leverage existing programs and initiatives to and increase the evidence that supports these programs, in particular prescribing and utilization data. So that would be the first of the 3, appropriate use. The director for that in our group is Jonathan Lamb. Data and analytics was then also established, and the intent here is to ensure that there is an optimal drug data and analytics ecosystem that facilitates decision-making with comprehensive and timely data. And I probably don't need to tell members of this audience where some of the challenges lie. We're very data-rich in Canada. However, that data is fragmented, it's in silos, it has many access barriers, etc. But hopefully those also present opportunities. There's a lot of willingness across the system partners to focus on what should be the most important shared goals, as well as where do we reduce duplication and gain some efficiencies in this system. Our role in drug and analytics would be to convene and coordinate, so there's a bit of a theme here, as well as, again, increase pan-Canadian data collection and access in order to better inform decision-making, and support that with system data analytics. Last but not least, we recently took on our director for system coordination and alignment. That person is Rachel Mannion. And the vision is still being built out under this new group, but we are hoping that this will bring efficiency and coordination across the system. Of course, the landscape is complex, continues to evolve, and there are many players that are an integral part of this system across provinces and territories. So one of the hopes for this group is that there will be an ability to convene those partners around shared priorities to bring some alignment into the space. You're probably familiar with this kind of schema where in the past, HTA and Canada's Drug Agency in its past iteration as CADF really only had a role in the highlighted boxes where we were participated in at launch and then often in the post-market space. With this new additional mandate of system coordination, there's a potential to work with partners to collaborate across that life cycle. So once again, the approach would be to start by listening, understanding, and exploring synergies in order to bring efficiency and coordination to the system through integration in order to have that impact on patient outcomes. Then here's the one that's just hot off the press. On October 10th, just over 2 weeks ago, was when the act respecting PharmaCare received royal assent. And this provides the foundational principles for that first phase of national PharmaCare. And I think, again, the panel this morning did a really nice job in articulating what little is known and the lot that is unknown. Where CDA's role, Canada's Drug Agency's role is going to be in time-limited support to two aspects of national PharmaCare that are outlined in that bill, which are the essential medications list, as well as the bulk purchasing strategy. So this is the support that we will provide, again, time-limited in those key areas, which is developing but not implementing the national bulk purchasing strategy, and starting a list of the essential prescription drugs and related products, which would then inform the development of the national formulary. And it is one of several inputs that will be sought across the system. And then, of course, a strategy for appropriate use with an ask of a report that will be delivered within a year of that bill receiving royal assent. I know there may be questions. We'll come back to those right at the end, but I did want to speak a little bit about, for this audience, other initiatives that Canada's Drug Agency. We have not stopped working on our core mandate, and much of where the direction has been over the last 3 years is ensuring we modernize the system as well as bring transparency to what we do. Many of you who have paid attention to the various channels that we have, including our dispatch, various forum for discussion, including our recent symposium that was held in Ottawa in September, would be familiar with some of these initiatives, including Target Zero, rolling reviews, time-limited recommendations, use of RWE, as well as one of the newest committees that has started under the last few years. Target Zero sounds exactly like it is. What we're trying to do is our part in shortening that time frame between Health Canada NOC and the timing of the draft recommendation for reimbursement. And so this initiative there's a couple of factors that come into play, including the option for parallel review with Health Canada especially on the clinical evidence. Rolling reviews also sound like they are. What this is a change to the processes where if there is pivotal data that is available after the submission has started, that this can then be added while the submission is in progress, and that is a change that has been asked for many years. Time-limited recommendations was added as an option for the deliberative committees, and this is where they would have a recommendation for reimbursement with the conditions that there is additional data that is provided, usually clinical trial data, often a phase 3 that would address the uncertainties or the key evidence gaps cited in the initial recommendation. And at that point, this would then help to resolve, hopefully, the uncertainties that were cited. Real-world evidence in decision-making, we always have received real-world evidence, especially for inputs to the economic model, but we have also opened the door to receiving real-world evidence to inform the clinical appraisal, so either as supplemental data to, again, either address uncertainties or address key evidence gaps. Sometimes it is also for the purpose of being primary data, especially when it is the primary data for comparative effectiveness and safety with external comparator arms and so on. And then lastly, the formulary management expert committee. That is a new committee that has been initiated over the last year. It does primarily deal with drug reviews that are initiated by a province or a territory. But one of the things that's been quite exciting is this has allowed us a bit of a innovation sandbox within Canada's Drug Agency, where we are trialing many of our new methods and processes. And then, speaking of which, this is the area where I can actually speak as myself, because this is the group that is under my shop. As the Director of Science and Methods, we are the methods and standards by which Canada's Drug Agency does its work, including that of appraisal. And we are really excited about a number of initiatives that have been undertaken in the last 2 years. So starting with, many of you may have heard, we are evolving the deliberative framework to ensure that not only is a decision predicated on the clinical or economic evidence appraisal, but it also thoughtfully and consistently includes consideration of patient, health system, societal, ethical considerations as well. And so that's dictated some changes, because it has changed the framework for deliberation at the committee meetings, as well as the use of deliberative questions, as many other HTAUs, including ICER, if you're familiar with their work. It has changed the way we present the information in the Canada's Drug Agency report that goes to the committee. And because that information has to be different and presented in a different manner to facilitate deliberation. As well, we would expect to see revisions in how the recommendations are framed, because to be much more transparent about what pieces of information were considered and which pieces of information or evidence actually informed the decision, so that is apparent to all. So lots of work going on here, again, to hopefully maintain the quality of what we're doing or even improve it, but to gain some efficiencies, and mostly to bring transparency to what the agency does. So I think, I did forget to say, we also have recently added some work with our engagement team to also evolve the way that we take in patient input as well as expert input, again, to inform deliberation. This is just a snapshot of some of the timelines to say, even though many of the initiatives that I spoke about under the pharmaceutical review renewal process have not yet hit, they will in the near future, so stay tuned. And with that, I will probably stop, because I recognize that there's the value of this is probably in some question and discussion. So with that, I'll invite Andre to come back up. There are many ways to connect with us. We even have our own QR code. Please sign up for that if you wish to get our dispatch newsletter. And with that, I thank you.
Thanks.
If you'd like to sit.
So questions for Dr. Hussain? Yeah, right in the middle here. See, you guys are warming up to this. I don't even have to ask him to address questions.
Hi. So for time-limited recommendation, right now the guideline says it has to be a phase 3 trial. And that means it's a very big missed opportunity, because there are a lot of real-world data that are waiting, and that can very well contribute to that thing. I was wondering, like, your opinion and something that we might see in near future.
So the quick answer would be yes, of course, there is an option to provide real-world evidence. The challenge is often the uncertainty or the evidence gap that is cited as being key in the recommendation may or may not be addressed by real-world evidence. So hence the thought of sort of putting it out there as the best evidence to potentially address that in a time-limited recommendation under those circumstances would be some form of clinical data, probably the phase 3 or even another type of clinical trial, but there is, of course, the option for real-world evidence. It would really depend on what the evidence gap or the key uncertainty was.
Other questions, comments? Over there, yep. And there's one in the far corner here, too.
And I just realized there's a pillar that's probably obscuring some sight lines, so I apologize if there's people behind the pillar that I have not seen.
Yep, so go ahead.
Thank you. It's Brad McCaw with Alexion, one of the rare disease companies. And a question regarding both the time-limited review process and the complex review process, which seems to be a well-suited review process for rare disease drugs. Obviously, at this point, it's pretty much limited to new places in therapy, but it allows for ongoing dialogue with clinical experts. It allows for new data to be submitted throughout the review process. Can you maybe speak to having that integrated with your time limited, and is there room to carve that out specifically for rare disease reviews, because they're sort of forced into the box of all the other existing reviews that CDA goes through?
So I'm probably not best suited to answer the specifics of that question, because that group, Pharmaceutical reviews, is actually under a different branch. But that said, I don't want to avoid the question. I think that one of the reasons why we're evolving the deliberative framework is a recognition of the fact that many therapies, including rare diseases and many oncology agents and a number of other treatments, are not solely, the decision would never be on the beautiful clinical evidence or crystal clear economic evidence, but often includes the nuances that come with the considerations around what is the value to a patient, what is the value to a health system, what is the value to society, where are there ethical considerations in persons that who was left out by the current treatment pathway, etc. And so that is one of the reasons why we haven't necessarily moved directly to that complex pathway for rare diseases, where I do know that is a pathway for some other health technology assessment bodies. Because really, if we are true to the spirit of ensuring those considerations are debated, deliberated for every decision, then it should also address the concerns for rare diseases. So that I think is one aspect. You mentioned ongoing patient and expert input. So this is another reason I mentioned with that slide that we are looking to evolve how we gather and use patient input and expert input. And yes, you're correct. We would probably seek that at different points, not just at the beginning, because of course there are some questions throughout the review that may be better informed by that perspective. And so I think two of the things that you're looking for will be met by some of the work that is happening. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, at the back.
Hello, me again behind the column. So it's a kind of a long question, but mostly a discussion. So when we were talking about the new focuses on CDA, one was about appropriate use, which stated taking medicines best suited for their patients and their personal needs. So if we take the rare disease, for example, a patient that has a mutation, it's proven by science that they're well treated on their specific targeted disease, but compared to a wild-type patient, they will respond better on the targeted therapy. Now, because of the intricacies of rare disease spaces, we have to use RWE phase 2 data, and from a pharmacoeconomic perspective, this will add more of an uncertainty into the PE model, and this will decrease the robustness of it. So by the time we finish the process with CDA, we can both agree that we might have a positive recommendation, but because the robustness is so low, we will end up with a rebate, for example, that will be high. And this will be taken by the PCPA and perhaps increased a bit. And then what will happen is that the discussions will be a bit more difficult. So what can we do between CDA and manufacturers to partnership, or perhaps have something built? And to your best knowledge and opinion, do you think that a specific rare disease approach might alleviate this issue? Because yes, we can have the positive reviews, but we still have some issues down the road, and this can make it so that manufacturers are not encouraged to produce into the rare disease spaces because it's so difficult to reach the end step, which is PCPA at the end of the day.
Wow, and you've managed in one comment to actually highlight where many challenges are across the system. So maybe let me approach it like this. So any evidence that is appraised within a drug review is intended to ask the question, the HTA question of what is the value of this product relative to the other existing options. And I recognize, especially in the case of rare diseases, the existing option may have only been supportive care. It may not have actually even been a treatment option. But that is the question, because what HTA is doing is making a recommendation to bring something into the system that is often incremental. And so therefore, the key piece of evidence that we look for on the clinical side, and this will become much more clear in the methods guide that is also coming, stay tuned in April, that what we are looking for is primarily evidence on comparative effectiveness and safety. So that often is not even from the pivotal data, because the pivotal data is even if it's comparative, it's usually versus a placebo or it's versus supportive care or whatever. So it may or may not answer the question. Then you're now stuck with using indirect comparisons or comparisons that are direct, but they're cobbled together from real-world evidence and so on, which is, I think, what you're talking about. There is uncertainty around that for many reasons, unfortunately, because one is not to say that you can't have robust RWE, you can, but the conclusions from which you can draw are much less than what you can draw from clinical trials, because you haven't addressed bias, you haven't addressed confounding. I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, and then that uncertainty is taken into the economic analysis as well. So you're right. The decision, because I think what I was hoping you all got was the decision, even with uncertainty in clinical evidence, uncertainty in the economic evidence, you can still reach a positive recommendation. But what you're citing is, if there's then a time-limited recommendation and it's predicated on yet more data coming, what are the options if there's never a plan to bring a phase 3, right? Because I think that's what you're asking. So that's where I think that there needs to be engagement with not just Canada's Drug Agency, but then who's downstream of that? It's the payers, right? The provincial, territorial governments that are actually the payers for those drugs, to say, then what evidence would then resolve the uncertainty that was key? And is there a role for real-world evidence to do that? And that's not actually something that we ourselves alone could not do, because it's actually post-recommendation for us, if you understand what I'm getting at. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you.
So one last quick question. We're out of time almost. Target zero. There's a lot of excitement in this audience for that, but what's the target? When are we going to get there?
So we are looking to launch Target Zero imminently, so within the next, so for us, there's always a bit of a time lag. So even if we say we're launching it today, then it's the next submission we get to, which means then it's a couple of months down the road, because those submissions take, the 180 days and so on. So you don't actually see the reports, et cetera, that are done until 6 months ago, even though we launched it now. But it is being launched within the next, I want to say 3 months. And our hope is that there will be, let's hope that the first product that goes through that the company or the sponsor that is participating in that will actually sign that we can share the information with Health Canada, which is, I think, an advantage, because then not only would you be able to, if it all goes well and there's an NOC and there's then going to be a draft recommendation available pretty well at the same timing as the NOC. So that's the best case scenario. In the even a less optimal scenario where there's an NON or NOD from Health Canada, there's still an option in this process for the review at the, for HTA to continue and for you to engage in that dialogue with Canada's Drug Agency, even if it stops with Health Canada. So that is a potential upside for that program.
So Dr. Farah Hussain, thank you. Please give her a round of applause. Thanks.